artists, today we're going to play with Sharpies and isopropyl alcohol to make abstract designs. So the Sharpies that I have, I purchased from Costco for about $12 for a set of 24. The alcohol you can buy in like a first aid section of Walmart, or this I got from Fred Meyer's or Walgreens, anything, any place like that that has first aid supplies. And then you're going to need a non-porous tile. That means it needs to be glossy, and these cost, last time I got them, about 17 cents at Lowe's. So you'll need a little tile, and there are different shapes. If you want to buy a bigger tile, you could do something like that. The other thing you can use is either a paper towel, or I prefer, like this is an old t-shirt cut up, and the reason I prefer that is because the paper towel can leave little fibers on your tiles, but it works fine as well. So the first thing you need to do is to clean your tile. If you don't clean your tile, sometimes you will find gummy residue on here, and then your alcohol that you put on here will not stick to your tile. So you're gonna rub that on there, just kind of clean your tile and then dry it. The other thing that I have done is I have put my alcohol in a little dropper, or you could put it in a bowl and you could use kind of like an eyedropper, medicine dropper of some sort, but I have this purchased dropper that I am going to use to drop my alcohol onto the tile. The tile that I showed you at the beginning, I did with these colors right here, and this is the same set of colors. So you really, I did patterns for these, but you really don't even need to do patterns. The only thing that I would say is that if you do this, that you want to make sure you get right along the edges and do well along the edges. And for mine, the finished one, I also took the side of my Sharpie and I went along the side of my Sharpie and colored it so that the side wouldn't stay white. So when you do this, you really need to think about getting those edges, and then you just kind of need to think about what colors do you want next to each other, because the colors are going to mix and form new colors. So when I did mine, I did not put blue next to orange. And the reason I didn't put blue next to orange is because blue and orange, those complementary colors that are opposite on the color wheel, the opposite from each other, can turn to brown. So I just kind of made sure on mine here I did not put blue next to orange. So you would just fill your space with color, kind of get the edges and go along the edges as you work. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you then. All you have to do is add drops of your alcohol, and you just kind of wait it out. And I'll show you a couple other techniques and a couple other things you can do. But your alcohol is going to run into each other, alcohol drops, and it's going to move the ink. So see, we're already starting to move the ink here. We're starting to move the ink here. Getting some really cool lines coming up here where the ink is starting to move. And you can kind of do it and wait and come back to it, or you can do a couple other things which I'll show you in just a second. So I'm going to keep adding a few more drops. Okay, and let it move. Now, if you get impatient, you can kind of move it yourself. I don't recommend doing that too much, but you can kind of swish and move, because you can end up getting muddy. The hardest part of working with Sharpie markers or anything like that is knowing when to stop. And in my 5th grade classes, we do alcohol inks, which is one of my favorite mediums, and this is very much like alcohol inks. And we end up with beautiful designs, and sometimes you don't know when to stop. And it ends up getting muddy, but I'll show you what you can do about that in just a minute. So I'm liking this. I am just going to stop, and it would be best if I could just kind of leave it alone, because moving it is going to cause some differences. Now I'm getting a really light area, and I'll show you about what to do with that really light area. Now this one I used primary colors on. So think about how the red is going to mix with the yellow, and I'm going to get a new color, orange. The blue will mix, and I will get some green. But like I said, I put designs on both of mine. You could do flowers, you could do whatever you like, but just realize it is not going to look the same. So if you do a realistic design like flowers, you're probably not going to see those flowers, but it might be fun just to watch those flowers move and change. So see, I'm starting to get some green. I'm starting to get, that's a really pretty orange there, very vibrant. And the colors are then starting to mix. Okay. So if I get a light area that I really don't like, we'll leave this one alone for a minute. Actually, I'm going to add a drop here and a drop here. You can keep adding drops in some areas that didn't. So look how light this is. While it's still wet, what you can do is take your Sharpie, and while it's still wet, and kind of just add dots of color with your Sharpie. Might be a little bit too wet here. Okay, so I get some dots, and what happens is those dots spread out. And you end up with what I call like lilac or flowery looking sections. And it doesn't look like I'm doing much. I'm just leaving little teeny dots, but it again will spread out. And that's kind of what I did in this section right here. Is it ended up being white, so I took some of the purpley color and added some dots. I did the same thing right here. I added some pink and yellow dots, and you end up getting kind of, since there's still some alcohol in there, it spreads out, and you end up getting this, like I said, lilac or flowery looking section. So I'm liking that a little bit better there, and it's starting to spread out, but I don't want to move it to show you. Now look what happened on this one. I've got some sections that I really like. So here's another tip and trick for you. This got dark and muddy. You can take your paper towel and dab, and then kind of watch what happens, and the ink will still move around into those sections, but you can play and continue to dab. If you got a section that you don't like, just dab it a little bit, and then maybe add a drop or two more of your alcohol ink. Now, if I decide, you know what, I really don't like this, I played with it too long, this is messy, I really like this area, I don't like this, it's okay, because with alcohol inks, what you can do is wipe it off, add some more alcohol here. I shouldn't say alcohol inks, with Sharpies, when you're working with alcohol and Sharpies. It's the same principle with alcohol inks, is you can wipe it off. And now I can just start over with a new design. So if I like this a lot, and I want to keep it and maybe make it into a coaster and give it to Grandma, you can sign your name on the back of it. You need to do a couple of things, and this is not very expensive to do this if you already have the Sharpies. And like I said, these are 17 cents. This is where it can get a little spendy, but I use my Joann Fabrics 40% off or even 60% off. This is like $8.99, or you can get it at Hobby Lobby. And this is a varnish you would want to spray on it, and this protects it. This protects your artwork. Then this is a clear glaze that is like a firing glaze that you'd put on ceramic without firing. So this is the clear glaze you would put over on top of it. Then you could sit a hot coffee cup on something like this. You do not want to put this on first unless you want to do an experiment, because if you put this on first, it moves your Sharpie. And I found that out the hard way with something else I'll show you in a minute. But you want to put this on first, the Kamar varnish, and then put on the clear glaze and use your 40% off coupons to buy those. So I really like this one, and if I wanted to keep it, I would do that. So you can also play a little bit more. Like I told you, I think one of my favorite mediums is alcohol inks, and we do those in 5th grade. So this is alcohol ink. So the process with the Sharpie is similar to what you do with alcohol inks. But something I've been experimenting with that you could also do with this after you've varnished it. So I would varnish it. I would do what I'm going to show you, and then I'd varnish it again. Is I have been playing with Sharpies over the top of alcohol inks. So you can take and add Sharpie lines, and I took an alcohol ink project, I put Sharpie over the top of it, and then I varnished it. And that's where I found out the hard way that you can't do the glaze first, because another one of these I did, I really liked it, and it just went everywhere. The other thing you can play with, and they're really fun, but again, gets a little bit more spendy. This is another alcohol ink project, but you could apply this to the Sharpie, is these Posca pens. And they're paint pens, and so then I drew over the top of my alcohol ink project with a Posca pen. And I could do something like that with this, find an area. Now this one has already been varnished. Find an area, say, okay, I'm gonna make a flower out of this, and define your flower. Maybe add some dots on your flower and some lines, and then keep adding. So this is something else that you could do, and you could play with the Sharpie project if you wanted to do, and add to what you have already done. So I hope you have fun. I love doing these. You guys probably see that my hands are always kind of stained from doing these kinds of things. You may want to wear rubber gloves to do this, but it is just really fun to play with. I hope you guys have had some good resources this summer and have fun just experimenting with art. Go to some of those sites, Kitchen Table Classroom, Deep Space Sparkle, some of those sites, or just peruse Pinterest, some of the ideas I've pinned under maybe files, and explore and have fun with lots of different art projects and medium, and pray that you and your family have a blessed summer.